Okay, so I'm just recording on my part because I was not able to record yesterday. But I know that maybe when I send this in, when I try to do resubmit, so that my recording is in there, I know it might show late on my part or within my group, but I think I just want to give credit to, I think it was, I didn't watch the recording of what came in for yesterday for this discussion, but I think it was from Tava in our group. So he submitted it on time, but if it shows late, it's because I turned it in today and he turned his in before the deadline. So just want to make sure that he gets credit for being on time. But just jumping into the discussion, reading on being Black and middle class. Excuse me. The questions that we were asked were, what does the writer have to say about race and how race is connected to class? And when reading the article, I felt that he kind of saw it as two identities of him, which he identifies with or as. I'm not saying that correctly. And what comes to mind when I read that question are just a few things that I can refer back to from the article, which when he says, of course, when you think about it, class and race are both similar in some ways and also naturally opposed. Can we talk? There are two forms of collective identity with boundaries that intersect, but whether they clash or peacefully coexist has much to do with how they are defined. Being both Black and middle class becomes a double bind when class and race are defined in sharply antithetic terms. So that one must be repressed to appease the other. And just kind of like summarizing some of the other parts that kind of relate to this section, what I just read. Because of course we know that this is based off of his experiences in his life and you know what he's saying to his friend, but also in the reading it kind of seemed as if when he's talking about race and trying to explain, not at one point not being Black and middle class as one, but just explaining like the values or like what kind of like how do you say, what kind of like defines one as being middle class, I would say, is as if that didn't relate to him, if I'm making sense on that. So at one point he kind of describes what middle class means, but not being Black. And so when he's kind of, you know, describing these characteristics or definitions of being middle class to his friend, it's if he becomes less Black, you know, to his people and to his culture, as if becoming middle class makes him less of who he is, if that makes sense. And so that's what I kind of got out of how he connected the two, and that how for him to be one or identify as one, he has to kind of push the other to the side, whether that be if he's identifying with his race and with his culture, with his people, or being, well, this is what I am, you know, these are the sacrifices I've made to be where I am and being, you know, in the middle class category. So it's just some things like that from the article stood out to me about how those two can be connected. The difficulties of it, and I think it's just hard from where his point of view is, and not just for him as an individual, which it talks about individualism, but also for all African Americans, where, you know, like living in America, mainstream, you're told things, you're growing up learning things, you know, like pursue, achieve the highest, obtain whatever you can. But for them, or for, you know, their culture, African Americans, it's as if it's the opposite. And so if I'm quoting here, where did I see it? You know how they tell us to work hard for ourselves and our families and to seek our opportunities whenever they appear, inside or outside the confines of whatever ethnic group we may belong to, right? So this is for everyone. But for them, they see a pattern of racial identification, and that comes from his time, talks about the 60s, where it urges middle-class Blacks and all Blacks, in parentheses, in the opposite direction of that. So this pattern asks us to see ourselves and battle a minority, and it urges an adverse stance. So again, like it kind of just talks about in their culture, and as he's thinking about this experience to his friend, it's as if because he's doing the things that he's brought up because of American culture, to shoot for the highest, that their culture is kind of in the opposite way, and because of society and from other cultures, ethnic groups, that they are seen to go in the direction that he is not being told growing up, and as well as many others. I think that's some of the difficulties. And so I think just with that, it's just hard to kind of identify with both. Again, the Black middle class has always defined its class identity by means of positive images gleaned from middle class and upper class white society, and by means of negative images of lower class Blacks. This habit has been going on since slavery. Slaves mimic the whites they served and held themselves above the field slaves. So, just kind of something I'm just reading out loud. Again, he refers back to his time in the 60s. And they refer to it as a double bind, right? So with race and with class. Talking about his father. Oh, and I think I kind of like to where he talked about sacrifice, and so it's as if those who are willing to sacrifice and work hard are those who can become members of middle class or higher, and those who aren't willing to sacrifice identify as a lower Black class. Not even Black, but I mean all as a lower class. So I think it's just that that stigma or that way of thinking for them, that kind of is a difficulty in itself, because it just kind of limits their opportunities and what they can push themselves to to achieve. And the other question was, so difficulties, talked about how race and class are connected, and what expectations do whites and or Blacks have about Black people? I'm seeing a lot of values, and sorry, I'm kind of taking long to kind of quote what the article is saying, because I read it and then I just forgot what places I wanted to kind of talk about. I'm reading when he's talking about, yet I ended the 60s in graduate school a little embarrassed by my class background and with an almost desperate need to be Black. The tables had turned. I knew very clearly, though I struggled to repress it, that my aspirations and my sense of how to operate in the world came from my class background, yet being Black required certain attitudes and stances that made me feel secretly a little, just lost my place. Duplicitous. The inner capability of compatibility, of class and race I had known in the 1960s was gone. So it's just what they go with, like racial identification, again, stigma, and that that mindset of they're expected to be, are some of the things that I think, and I will choose to kind of explain on why Blacks expect certain things from themselves, at certain attitudes, how he said, at certain stances, for them to identify with who they are as being Black and not having that class. And so I think that can even be a difficulty that he faced, or that African Americans face, the stigma, the expectations of what's required you. And I think I read in here a little bit more up about having to like hate what you want to be. It's a matter of hating lower class Blacks, but of hating what we did not want to be. So your aspirations in life, like they know that for them, expectations, like even for the whites, saying they expect them, or a majority of them, to not achieve maybe a college education, or things in life that they want for themselves, and so that's expected. And not just in any class that you are, but in Blacks in general, right? Because it's, if you're Black, you're Black. That's what's being said. I think those are some of the, and I know there's some other examples that I wanted to talk about it, but I just can't remember where it was or what question I wanted to answer for it. But those are the 3 questions that we were asked. Try my best to relay it the best that I could. My thoughts go, and then I just tried to take it all in at once. But again, just wanting to make sure that I give credit to Teva, who turned his video in earlier yesterday. So if it shows that it's late, then it's just me being late, not him. So yeah, I think that's it. Thank you, and see you in the next one.